will host some of MENA's leading platforms to talk about best practices for content distribution and monetization. And moderating this panel is Yammine Ghazal, and he's Innovation Director at MNC Satchin. He's in charge of digital marketing and implementations for group companies. So please give a warm welcome to Yammine. The floor is yours. He'll be introducing the panelists as well.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. So our session today is about monetization and distribution strategies for online content. And the challenge of monetization is facing digital publishers across the region and MENA especially. And we're seeing it for real due to the closing of several news and media entities. So, and now with the rapid growth of mobile and video on-demand content and video content as well, so everyone, including publishers, they're revisiting their strategies to monetize better their content. Please join me in welcoming Maha Nizam. She's Deputy GM for Diwani. Diwani is a leading publisher in the region. Maha is a computer engineer. She has an MS degree. She worked as a development manager with Yahoo, MENA, and also worked has consulting experience with Booz & Company. Welcome. Also, we have Yammine. Jad is digital manager for Discovery Networks, MENA. Jad is in charge of the digital presence of the network brands, of the different network brands. He led the development of Fatafit's digital footprint following the move of the TV into pay. And he also assisted the launch of Fatafit's ICCA Online Culinary Academy. So let's get started. As we know, it takes a lot of effort and money and resources to create content. Technologies are changing, audiences are shifting from one audience from one platform to another. They have short attention span. So in a content-hungry e-world, what do you do to feed that beast?
That's a very relevant question because honestly today, as we were talking before, creating good content is a challenge, but the bigger challenge is distributing this content. You have an audience that's scattered everywhere on multiple social platforms. Each social platform is creating new products. We were talking about Instagram, they made stories, now they have lives. So attention span is very low and people are everywhere. So the challenge for us as a digital publisher is to actually create the content that goes well with every platform. So basically distribution today is not a secondary layer on top of content creation. We used to talk about content is king before, and content is still king, but today you have distribution that's become a major part of this content. So basically at Diwani, for example, what we do is we think of what content should we create for Facebook specifically, or for Instagram specifically, or for the web specifically. We don't think of content in absolute terms anymore. The secret is also to be very adaptive, because you have a lot of changes.
So you create content per platform or just content that fits all?
No, we create content by platform. Exactly this. We create content by platform because we know that users look for different things per platform. There's a lot of synergies, obviously, between the content we create for all platforms, but we think in platforms first and then the content.
Jad, how do you do that? With Fatafit, we all are familiar with Fatafit. It's a leading product, and TV. So you're recently moving into pay TV. What does that mean for online audiences as well?
Well, with the move into pay TV, we had this very big realization that we needed to be bigger and louder on digital more than ever before, because that became our mass communication touch point with our fans. So this is when we started to pivot our in-house production capability towards short-form content, building synergies with the existing TV productions in order to maintain the cost of this short-form load to be able to run a successful online platform which helps us monetize as well. So what that meant for us was basically the more content we put out there, the more appetite the fans got, and the more it grew our metrics. So From just producing 100 short-form content 2 years ago, which used to go on Fatafit as filler, we're now producing 8 to 10 times more that, and the appetite is still growing, and it will continue to grow.
So you're actually producing more content?
We are actually producing more content now for online specifically, whether that's for our VOD service or for social different platforms.
So when preparing for a show, you kind of start, this is for TV and I'm going to create something for online, or you just start from a concept and wrap it around all the platforms?
Well, we do both. So we have a factory-style content, which has now been replicated everywhere, basically with the hands-only models everywhere. So that's our factory format, and then we have more creative VOD formats which try to expand into other verticals, so maybe sometimes parenting, makeup, food reviews, etc. And then we have the VOD content that we build around the shows that we're producing for TV. Seeing as how now we're in pay TV and the rights for the shows are exclusive to our affiliate, which is BN at this point. So they have exclusivity for that content for 6 months to a year. So what we do is we actually create fresh, original content for online, but which is linked to the TV show. So we'll create, let's say, 35 extra short-form videos, which will go online at the same time as the show is being aired, which will help to drive the viewership and help build the engagement across from TV into digital.
Let me put my advertising hat on for a second. So advertisers want to be, present online, want to be present within the programs. So what's the model here nowadays? Is it advertising? Is it product placement? How do you measure success for you and for your clients?
Okay, so on the first part, is it advertising? Is it product placement, branded content? We believe content is becoming more and more important than advertising in relaying your message, because as we were saying, consumers are becoming smarter, so they're very sensitive to pure advertising. However, we still do a lot of, traditional advertising in the digital sense. In terms of measurability of what's best today, we're doing a lot of branded studies. So what we do a media campaign basically for a client, whether it's content or advertising, etc. And we measure how did the perception of the brand improve in consumers' minds? And we see that content has a much bigger impact. So content, when it comes to product placement, branded content, it has a much bigger impact on consumer minds than traditional advertising.
So what counts better now? Is it reach or engagement? It's the never-ending question. It's like chicken and the egg.
Well, first thing I think is always to see what your client is looking for. What is the advertiser looking for? And then build the KPIs of your campaign around the expectations of your client. So for us, for example, it might be more of a success if we tell our client to make sure that the product placement looks very native and it's very within the normal flow of the content, and that will get more views, more reach, better engagement. But then maybe it's for him it's something else. So it's always good to have a two-way discussion with your client. Show him examples. I mean, teach your client success. Show him what it's like to have a proper video done with product placement and a sponsored video which is not ramming the advertising down the user's throat, and benchmark.
So we have the content, we have, say, product placement, but how do you do the channel mixing? We're all familiar with the paid, owned, earned concept, and so how do you start planning? Because at the end of the day, you want to bring people to your own platforms, but sometimes the reach and engagement is on Facebook. So how do you manage across these two platforms?
We don't think of these as competing platforms. So we don't think like, oh, my user is going on Facebook, what can I do to bring them back to my web? Today we're not a website company. We are content publishers across platforms. And the web is as important as all the social platforms. Obviously, working with other platforms is more challenging to make money for us than working on our own web. But we know the audience is there. So this is something unavoidable. We have to be there. And it's the same thing when we work with brands. We do what makes sense for them. We cannot push users to go to their websites. If they have a very strong Facebook page, let them leverage Facebook pages, even if they're at the mercy of basically Facebook and Facebook metrics and the changes in Facebook rules. This is where the audience is. You cannot just avoid
Jad,
it.
can you relate to that, especially that most of your content is based on TV content and that you need to have people see it on your own players to be able to monetize that? Is that the same deal with you?
Well, not all of our content. I mean, most of our content right now is pure digital, but yes, we do face that, but at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves two questions in terms of any social media platform that we are using. Question number one, is it bringing traffic to our website? If yes, if it's still showing up in the first 2 pages of your Google Analytics report, keep at it. Is your sales team able to monetize that? Can your sales team go to the market and say, I'll give you a post on our Facebook and that will, et cetera, et cetera? If the answer is yes again, keep at it. This is a platform that you need to invest in and put effort in.
I would also say that the type of content that works on every platform is different. This goes back to the first thing we discussed. Yeah. So basically, if my client is interested, for example, in videos, I know that short-form video, bite-sized video works best on Facebook. Yeah. There's no point of putting it on the web. Yeah. You know, if they're interested in written content, etc., nobody's going to read it on Facebook. If they're interested in nice visuals, go on Instagram. So your channel mix really depends on what's the format of the content and what are you trying to get out of it.
So sometimes you're creating breadcrumbs, putting content here and there.
Definitely, most of the times, not sometimes.
So let's talk about audiences a bit. Are we all fighting over the same audience in the region, or are there what's the MENA market size nowadays in terms of digital spending and audiences?
I think people from TV can comment more about digital market size and market share, but when you say we, you mean the overall media space. Listen, we know we are all consumers of digital content here. We know how often during the day we are on our phone, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat, just consuming and sharing content. I think the time spent just consuming is just getting bigger. Yes, we are sharing the eyeballs, let's say, and the attention, but it's not, the market is also getting bigger and bigger in terms of consumption. Today, every time we have a new platform, people are maybe migrating from one platform to the other. I mean, Instagram stories started, so they said Snapchat is going to go down. Yes, but most people are just creating more and more accounts and consuming more and more content.
I would say the problem is not with the size of the market, but which portion of the market is actually monetizable at this point, and which market within MENA is mature enough and is getting the advertisers' attention. Right now, we're all fighting over the GCC uniques, and all of the advertisers, all the clients come, they want that Gulf traffic. There's very little interest in anything else. It's not worth the investment, it's not worth the commission and everything that goes into it. And I think as the markets mature, whether it be Levant, North Africa, Egypt, Iraq, everywhere, we will start to have better monetization opportunity. And I think I think a lot of news publishers in the region are guilty of this. They try to do everything themselves, and they look at people who are in their market as direct threats. We are now unable, as digital publishers, to absorb all of the budgets that used to come for TV. If a client came on board and tells you, I'll give you all of my marketing budget, as we were discussing before, what can you do with it on digital? Unless we all come together and start having bigger ad exchanges, making it more targeted, more premium, and starting to make this offering more expensive rate-wise so that we can absorb these budgets and not have them
So do you agree that digital budgets are growing, but the overall budget for clients and for advertisers is being reduced a little bit.
I didn't hear very well.
Overall digital budgets are growing, but the overall spending is shrinking.
It's definitely shrinking, especially with the economy right now. I mean, there's a contraction. Even in Dubai, we feel 12% contraction in the market.
Okay.
But going back to Jad's point about we're not able to absorb all of TV budgets on digital, yes, we're not even trying to. Okay, again, every channel.
If we try?
But every channel has its own target. Okay, today when you put advertising on TV, you're getting a reach that nobody can give you, and it's even in developed market. This is not something that digital has tried to do. If we're talking about other channels like newspapers, magazines, yes, and this is where the budgets, most of the budgets are shifting. It's not really from TV, because what we see in terms of digital advertising is that we're creating this one-on-one communication with the audience that TV doesn't offer. So as I was saying earlier, we're trying to make brands more desirable, not more known. So it's a different battle basically.
So how is social media affecting SEO? So we all know we all want to be present on search engines, but is social affecting SEO in a negative way?
We view these as two different sources of traffic. People look for things on Google and they consume stuff on social. And today we have an almost 50-50 split of where our traffic is coming from, and we have dedicated teams for each type of content. We have a team that just looks at search and a team that looks at social media. I don't think they're eating up from each other. I think they complement each other basically in terms of content needs.
So, and what's your view on clickbaits? We're seeing a lot of clickbaits. We're seeing lots of fake news nowadays just for the sake of getting traffic. Is this a working strategy?
I think just the fact that clickbait is a viable monetization strategy proves that there's something which has become obsolete in the way that we monetize website traffic. There's literally no way that a simple click is putting money into someone's pocket. There's something that has to change here. And this is what premium content publishers like Yammine and like us with Fatabit are trying to do, is try to give clients a premium content offering which is not advertising, which, as she was saying, uplifts the brand. So what we try to do, in fact, is to package this as a 360 deal, TV, online, and even on-ground activations with events, social, digital, everything. Give clients a whole-rounded approach, leverage the power of the brand and leverage the power of the stars and influencers that are connected with our brands in order to monetize better and maximize our profit and their ROI.
We were discussing before the panel, you know, the role of Arabic content, and there's like a big theory out there that Arabic content is still very low, below 5% or below 7%. Is this anyway true nowadays?
I think 15 years ago when I started working in digital, we used to say we have less than 1% of content in Arabic. Today this percentage has really gone high. I don't know the exact percentage, but I think there is an abundance of Arabic content out there. Every publisher is putting a lot of effort. I mean, Yammine, when we started 10 years ago, we started English, Arabic, and French. And today we only do Arabic. So the opportunity is like, there is an opportunity, but there is also a lot of content. So I don't think there's a problem in like, the amount of content that's available.
Is it due to lack of original content rather than aggregated or adapted content?
I think it's due to the lack of scope of what type of audiences are monetizable again. So if we look at what sales team come to us publishers with, is we need females, age category, this to that, young mothers. So that immediately puts us all into on a rail track, which means, okay, we have to do food, we have to do parenting, we have to do makeup, we have to do et cetera, et cetera. Well, based on data that we have as Discovery, we find that there's also a lot of appetite for factual entertainment. Like we have traffic going to our global sites from the region, which show that there's an appetite for science and investigation and stuff like that. But there's no Arabic providers doing that right now, and this is an opportunity. So, and we're looking to exploit that in the near future.
So Fatafit has built a good reputation in creating regional and local content. Would Discovery be jumping into a similar model at some point, you know, for the region?
Well, there's a lot of plans, and we're very flexible as Discovery in the way that we handle operations in every region. So we definitely could be doing that, but it's always about finding the right partner to do that. We always have always favor the approach of doing partnerships with local players who know what they're doing, who are able to do a lot of the grunt work and the heavy lifting, if you will. And while we provide our international expertise and the data and the corporate environment that comes with Discovery.
Well, you mentioned data. How much data do you put behind your decisions? You know, because data is everywhere nowadays, and we get it from all sorts of platforms. Sometimes it's overwhelming. So where do you draw the line between deciding and just following the data by?
We're very, very data-driven at Yammine. So we use a lot of tools that are readily available, but we also developed our internal tools, particularly when it comes to social content, because this type of content is very tricky to actually track and adapt, etc. So we've also developed our internal tools. We're very data-driven, and yet we do experiment with things that are that just seem like they make sense. Okay, but when we talk to brands, we are very we base all of our decisions on KPIs, on data, on insights.
So how do you define your KPIs and your return on investments?
It depends on what the target of the campaign is. But basically today, going back to the discussion about reach and engagement is really huge for us. Today on Facebook, they were discussing it this morning in the panel, basically what percentage of your video, for example, is viewed is a metric that's becoming more and more important, because anyone can get a number of views, but how long do they actually view the video for is becoming more and more important. So it really depends on what type of content you're talking about and where.
I guess, in my opinion, at the end of the day, yes, we're using these data, but we shouldn't forget that we're producing all of this content for human consumption, and
definitely,
the person is at the core of everything we do. So it needs to feel human. It needs to react with people at the end of the day.
And again, as they were saying in the morning, how can you create something new if you're just following the trend? And it's true. This is why for brand we're more conservative and very data-driven. But when it comes to our publications, we do try a lot of new things. We experiment, because today at Yammine we have all of our capabilities in-house. So we have our internal teams for video production, studios, etc. So we can afford to actually try new things, experiment, see how people react to them, and then adapt.
Jad, we were chatting before the session, and we were talking about content. And on social media, we end up consuming content very fast. And sometimes we spend a lot of effort on content that goes unnoticed. So do you recycle content? Is there a big no on recycling content, or is it just a norm in repackaging and recycling?
I think, first of all, the amount of content that you have to produce in a year has to be linked to your target revenue at the end of the year. So there's always a homework from end to start, if you will, that we do. It's like, how much are we looking to make at the end of the year? What KPIs and metrics do we need to do to achieve that? And what content, how much content do we need to feed the platform to be able to achieve that? And what is the cost for this whole operation to have a margin? And then we start establishing, okay, how do we get our content? Is it through outsourcing to a third-party production house? Do we build synergies with the existing production? Do we acquire? Do we recycle, etc.? And whenever we are creating a piece of content, we always have several uses for it planned, whether that is for simple video consumption, whether it's going to go as part of a listing article, those famous top 5 things you need to do and stuff like that. So there's always many things that we are planning to do with every single piece of content that from the moment that it is planned.
Also interesting to see when we talk about data that we get data from what works. So we tried this and it worked, and this is how well it did. And even if there's a piece of content that didn't work, there's also something to learn from there. Why didn't this work? And this is an exercise we actually do with our brand partners as well. We tell them this type of content was produced and did amazing because this is how your brand was perceived, etc. And this type of content did not do well. What did we learn from this? So there's no content that's just like lost, basically, or like an investment that's lost.
I would say learn from the trends that you're seeing, work with your development team or whoever you has built your CMS so that you can pick up your content trends immediately. So if you're seeing consumption on a particular topic or on a particular genre, make sure that you are able to flag that as soon as it happens so that you can produce more of that content.
How much are international trends applicable in the region in terms of data and behavior?
They're very applicable. We always have a delay in what works here versus we tend to copy here what they do internationally. But we're all following, I mean, in digital it's much faster than on other platforms. We're all following the same trends. I mean, the type of content, the bite-sized content that works on social started globally, and now here it's like the #1 content.
I think we even lead the world in terms of mobile penetration. I mean, on average, most sites and most content providers today still see around 40 to 30% from desktop. We're seeing less than 20 and less than 10 in some instances. So the whole of the MENA region skipped the broadband generation and went immediately into 3G and mobile. So I think we are leading in terms of mobile experience and consumption of video on mobile.
Perfect.